Hello, my fellow wizards. Much has changed in Wiz during the past year, including the introduction of cantrips, changes to Spellements, the addition of new social features like guilds and the social kiosk, the loyalty store, challenging new raids, the brand new world Novus coupled with the new archmastery system, and, whatever this is.
Oh my god!
However, there's always room for improvement, and now that it's a new year, it's time to discuss positive changes we'd like to see in the game going forward. So let's dive in with 10 changes that Wizard101 needs to make in 2023. Number 10. A permanent free first arc. Having the first arc from Wizard City to Dragonspire be free has been something Wiz players have been asking for a very long time. Historically, new players could play for free right up until they hit the 3 streets quest lines where they're cut off from entering Firecat Alley and Cyclops Lane unless they pay up. Players have argued over the years that this paywall is located far too early in the game and should be pushed back so people can get a better sense of the game and actually want to pay for it. Over the recent years, KI has finally started to take steps toward making at least parts or all of the first arc free, and most recently extended their free first arc promotion from December 2022 into January 2023, which makes it appear like they might be starting to seriously consider making it permanent. Obviously, this brings up other potential questions, like if Crowns players would be reimbursed for any areas they bought, but overall, I think many players would favor pushing back the paywall a bit further to encourage more players to try and stick with the game. It remains to be seen if KI continues the free first arc after the end of January, but just think of the possibilities if they did. Number 9. Improve the pet kiosk talent search and pricing. This is definitely still a sore spot for a lot of veteran players. Back in the olden days of pet hatching, you could actually search for up to 5 talents in the pet kiosk, and hatching prices were much lower than they are today, which made it easier for people to hatch their perfect pet. However, in April 2020, with the Play with Pets Spring Update, came changes to the pet system that included reducing the number of talents you could search for at once in the pet kiosk to 2 instead of 5, and vastly increasing the price of hatching through the kiosk, in some cases to over 100k gold per hatch. These changes obviously did not go over well with much of the community, as it seemed like just another way to arbitrarily slow down people's ability to breed the pet they wanted. KI also claimed that in this update they fixed the glitch which caused a pet unavailable error message to pop up when people tried to hatch. However, as many pet hatchers know, this error message is still a common and annoying issue to this day. I think many people, myself included, would like to see the hatch cost and talent search restored back to what it was before the April 2020 update, since it makes an already tedious, expensive, and RNG-focused activity that much more annoying and effectively bars lower levels from being able to breed pets due to lack of access to many effective gold farming methods early game. Especially when you consider KI also removed easy and free gold sources like the blackberry jellyfish from being viable anymore. Number 8. A better division between PvE and PvP spells. Okay, this is potentially a more controversial opinion, so I'm interested to hear your thoughts. But I think a lot of frustration with spell changes could be fixed if there was a better division between the PvP and PvE versions of spells. I'm talking like 2 entirely different systems here. I've noticed, especially in recent years, that there are a lot more disagreements between PvE and PvP players about how spells should function, which creates unnecessary tension, and I think one root cause is the back and forth pull between how spells work in each type of combat. A spell might work great for the strategies used in PvE, but have unforeseen consequences or drawbacks when used in the context of PvP, and vice versa. When the devs try to fix a spell to work better in one area, then it can negatively affect the other, causing an us versus them mentality between the PvE and PvP communities, which is not ideal. The devs have tried to fix some of these issues with spell audits, banning certain spells from PvP or PvE, and the introduction of roshambo gambits and different spellement paths, so players can pick which direction they might want a spell to take. However, it seems like there's still some frustration as spells are still constantly being tweaked, and it's a long grind to max out your spellements in both PvE and PvP. So, I'm wondering if they were to completely separate PvP and PvE versions of spells, if that might help negate some of the tension and allow devs to tweak each version to best fit its intended use. So if there's a PvE version of, for example, Vampire, and then a PvP version that better fits the Roshambo style of gambits and counters, you would only use each version in their respective area, and they wouldn't overlap otherwise. You might have entirely different spellbooks for each type of combat, so you can keep track of differences. Then the devs could tweak each version individually based on the context. There could still be spellament paths for each version of a spell if people want the ability to customize each version further, but otherwise the spells would be completely separate. The downside to this would be more Spellement farming, but I'm actually going to address that issue later in this video, so it might not be all bad if the correct changes were made. This is a tough subject, guys, and I admit that I don't PvP, so there could very well be intricacies that I'm missing from this issue. So let me know if you can think of any other solutions, or if you think the current system is fine as is. I'd love to hear from the PvP crowd about this. Number 7, more ways to get Spellements. Okay, so the devs did introduce new ways to get Spellements in Wiz, which are definitely an improvement over previous years. However, I think there could still be some tweaks to make the system feel less grindy and more satisfying. For low levels in the first arc, you can get rank 1 through 6 Spellements by farming certain bosses, and you can get a decent amount this way. However, you are cut off from farming a world Spellements once you progress past a certain point. There are also cantrip chests, which require energy, and the magic touch cantrip to unlock, which can give you a handful of Spellements, but they aren't ideal to farm. For higher levels, your options are boss rematches, which require resources to craft and a team, but the amount of Spellements you get often does not seem worth the time and cost. There are also key bosses, which drop pack Spellements and other pack gear, which is handy, but you need golden keys to access these bosses, which can be slow to gather, and if people of the wrong level bracket are in your team up, it can prevent you from gaining any rewards. Events like the Beastmoon Hunt and Scroll of Fortune can also give Spellements, but still in small amounts of 5 to 6 at a time, and Beastmoon only gives Spellements for PvP-centric spells like the Golems, so they aren't as useful for PvE players. Finally, the only other viable high-level option to get Spellements is with the Pet Retriever talents, which are locked behind paywalls to use, specifically requiring Elemental and Spiritual Retriever tokens, which can only be gotten in paid gauntlets such as Doomsday Croc, Unforgiven Dead, and Great Sky Train Robbery. Now, this sounds like a lot of options, right? However, many are level locked, paywalled, or incredibly tedious and resource heavy for very paltry rewards, considering it takes in some cases 720 Spellements to upgrade just one spell fully. All these methods simply aren't good enough. You could use all these methods and still farm for months just to get one spell upgraded and by only a few points of damage. Some methods are obviously more effective than others, but it would help a lot if they would increase the amount of Spellements you get for certain methods or reduce the resources required to craft the boss rematches, for example. The Retriever pet talents also need to be given free acquisition sources since they should never have been gated behind expensive gauntlets. It would be nice for Spellements to be a meaningful upgrade rather than an annoying, grindy mess for very little reward. Number 6, more guild content. This may very well already be in the works, but it would be great if the devs would add more depth to guild besides just raiding and decorating. I think it would be super cool to have customizable guild gear or even guild flags or crests, similar to Pirate 101. While obviously people can decorate their guild houses in unique ways, giving more of an identity and look to guild members would make them feel that much more individualized and fun to be a part of. I think for some groups, guilds are sort of just a means to an end toward raiding and getting endgame gear, so it would be cool to see more customization added. I'd also love to see more activities in general for guilds, like special games or guild versus guild mechanics to reward people remaining loyal to one guild and building their group up over time. I'm just saying, it could be even cooler.
Avengers! Assemble.
Right now, farming azoth is still kind of a tedious task, so a lot of guild members just don't have the time or patience to fully upgrade their guild houses, which is a pity. The decision to add a 2-week cooldown to leave and join guilds was also met with some frustration from players, so that might need to be revisited as well. Let me know what improvements to guilds you'd like to see. Number 5, a loot pity system. Gear farming in Wiz is another potentially divisive topic, so let's dive on in. Players have never been told the drop rate for many items, whether they come from farming a boss or simply opening a pack from the crown shop. We know what items may drop, but not the chance that they may drop, which can be very frustrating. KI also changed their previous policy on crafted gear so that in the new world Novus, you can no longer craft the highest tier gear with any school's lower tier gear. You now need your school specifically. This is a departure from crafted gear like Dragoon, where if you got tier 2 gear of any school, you could use it to craft tier 1 gear for your school. Novus bosses also drop all the school's gear rather than just your main school, which slows down the farming process considerably. I think it's high time that Wiz implemented a loot pity system of some kind. Now this could take many different forms, but the point is players should be rewarded for farming after a certain point. This could be some kind of token system where every time you beat a boss you get a token, and after a certain point you can exchange those tokens for the specific gear piece you want from a nearby NPC. or KI could simply revert their gear crafting system so that people can use any school's lower tier gear to craft the higher tier gear they want. Thankfully, there is evidence from a recent tweet that they may be considering doing just that, so let's keep our fingers crossed. I also think players should have the right to know drop rates for bosses, but especially for packs where you're essentially gambling on getting the item you want. Whatever form it takes, something needs to change because right now, farming for the best loot feels like an unending slog. Number 4, two-factor authentication. People have been asking for basic security upgrades like two-factor authentication for years now. This has become practically standard for most websites or games that require an account to access. Popular multiplayer games like League of Legends, Valorant, Genshin Impact, and Overwatch all have two-factor authentication as an option, and that's just to name a few. We can even see under official posts that KI recommends using two-factor authentication wherever possible, but have still not offered it as an option themselves for Wiz nearly 2 years later. When just a short time ago someone gained unauthorized access to KI's internal messaging system for Wiz, it just reminded everyone further that security needs to be a higher priority. People's accounts were not compromised in that case, but it made a lot of people a lot more anxious about Wiz's security practices. I hope in 2023 KI finally decides to prioritize player account safety and just adds two-factor authentication. Number 3, the ability to change names and gender. Do you have that one wizard sitting on your account that you regret naming, but you can't change it? I'm looking at you, Taylor Swifts, Patrick Stars, Luke Skywalkers, and Wolf Stormblades. You know what you did, and it's too late. Apart from deleting these wizards and losing all your progress, there is currently no way to change your characters' names or genders in Wiz, which is a bummer. We all make choices we regret, you know? I think it would be great to allow players to change their names and gender, even if it meant paying a bit in gold each time, or maybe having some kind of cooldown so people can't constantly change it every day. For some players, the character that they made 10 years ago may no longer reflect who they are now, so it would be great to give everyone options to tweak their characters as desired. Obviously, this would require some coding changes for gender-specific clothing and friends lists, but I think this would be a pretty well-received change from a lot of players. Number 2, more cosmetic options. I'm gonna be straight with you all, I need more hairstyles, okay? When KI added the magic mirror in the shopping district and allowed players to change their hair and eye color along with other facial features for gold, it was a great step forward for in-game customization. However, I think they could go just a little bit further. For one, colors on gear are still limited by gender. Shout out to my boys out here who just want to wear some pink, damn it! It would be amazing if Wiz would add more customizable colors, shades, and patterns for gear, maybe even a color wheel. I'd also love to see more types of hairstyles, hats, or even masks, glasses, tattoos, etc. Pirate101, for example, has a much bigger range of customization options, so it would be great to see more options in Wiz as well. The lack of customization right now leads to a lot of people basically all wearing the same few robe sets, which takes away a lot of individuality and creativity and makes a lot of wizards feel like carbon copies of each other. Like, I'm not trying to call you out, but if I see one more basic commander or elegant stitch, I might pull my hair out. Number 1, pet and mount stitching. Kind of along the same lines as gear, the current meta leads to people using basically the same mounts and pets across the board so they can have the best stats available. I'm looking at you, Frillasaurs and Gulcher mounts. This is a major bummer because there are so many other cool looking pets and mounts that go underappreciated and underused because they don't give any gear bonuses or useful cards. However, if KI added the ability to stitch pets and mounts the same way we can stitch gear, people could have so many more options without losing out on their stats. Don't get me wrong, I love my Frillasaurs, but I'd really rather be using a fennec fox or red panda. It would also be amazing to stitch a 50% mount on a slower mount and get the speed boost while still matching with my current gear aesthetic. This is such a no-brainer, I have no idea why KI hasn't added it yet, since they already have a stitching option coded into the game. I'd love to see people using more obscure mounts or pets and being able to show more of their individuality instead of everyone looking so similar all the time. Let's get it done, people! Alright, my fellow wizards, those are my 10 changes that Wizard101 needs to make in 2023. Let me know what you think of these ideas and what other changes you'd like to see this year. Also, comment below what pet or mount you'd use if you could stitch them. As always, I hope to see you out there in the spiral, and happy questing!